Okay, I'm gonna do a demo of the worksheet. So this is basically a review of what we did in class. Talking about gradients, the first thing we're gonna talk about is the blend tool. Blend tool is a two-part tool. The first thing you do, you go to Object, Blend, Blend Options, and you set the kind of blend you want. I want smooth color between these two pieces. I'm going to grab the two pieces, Object, Blend, Make. This is a live blend, so I can move this around and edit it however I like. I can change the color. I can change the other color. I can do quite a bit, actually, with that live blend. The other thing we can do is we can blend one shape to another shape. Let me get rid of this, and I'll start again with a rectangle. I'm going to grab these both. I'm going to go to Object, Blend, Blend Options, and this time I'm going to say Specified Steps. I'll just do one step. I'll go to Object, Blend, and hit the Blend, and hit Make. And as you can see, I get, in addition to changing the color to this kind of muddy purple, which is the midway point between the blue and the red, I also get this odd little shape. Now, this is kind of an easy lift for the program because there are 4 points in the square and 4 points in the circle. So it was kind of easy for the blend tool to do this. If you try something, this used to be a piece of type, this used to be a piece of type, they're just shapes now. I'm going to grab them both and do it again. I'll use that same blend option. I get this kind of weird Cronenberg hybrid that's not quite a G and not quite a 3. That's because the number of points on the G and the number of points on the 3 do not completely correspond. If I wanted something kind of funky, I would probably do 7 or 8 steps. This can be useful when you're doing motion design. You can create assets for motion design to create when you ever see a logo morph into something else, this is one way to create those assets. All right, let's move on to the gradient window. This is probably where you're going to be doing most of your gradient work. The gradient window, I'll start over and just go to Window, G for Gradient, is here. Let me get these out of the way. Let us begin with the linear gradient. That's this first one here. If I click on this box and click on linear gradient, this is the gradient slider. So I can use a preset gradient. I'll use orange yellow. These are called stops, and you can manipulate these to change the nature of the gradient. And I can remove a stop if I want to. I can remove or add as many stops as I like. Edit the gradient that way. I can also edit how steep the gradient is between the stops. You can kind of see this all showing up here as I move these sliders around. I can also edit the angle of the gradient. So if I go to 45 degrees, the other place that I can edit the angle of the gradient that's a little bit more free form is this gradient tool here in the toolbox. So I can just kind of go ha ha, ho ho, hoo hoo, and you can see if I start way up here and end way up here outside of the box, these two ends of the gradient are here and here. So if I stay inside the box, I get every aspect of the gradient. That is a linear gradient. Now, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to skip radial gradients for a second, and I'm going to come over here. The other aspect of linear gradients that I want you to be aware of is that a linear gradient can be applied to a stroke. This is a stroke. This is not a filled path. All right? It's a circle, just a simple circle. So if I click on the stroke, and I go back to linear gradient, and I'll choose this one again. So in this case, I think you can see this first one is called within, because the gradient has been applied within the stroke. And you can see it, the dark part, the light part. And if you wanted to reverse that direction, all you would need to do is press the reverse gradient button. That works, by the way, in every instance that you use it. You can reverse the gradient if you would like to. So this is within. If I come over here, nope, I don't want to do it. Look, I'm in the fill and not the stroke. Not what I wanted. So I'll make sure I'm back on the stroke. Important to know where you are. And I'll go to the second one. The second one is a cross. And so what's happening is the gradient starts at this spot, works its way around, and ends here. Watch, I'll reverse it. See that? Two very different types of gradients. And just by the way, let me show you a neat little, if I copy this, paste it in front, and do that, and if I change the angle of the gradient, can you see the optical illusion? That this now looks like it's coming up at us and this looks like it's coming down at us? All it takes is a little bit of judiciously applied highlight and shadow to make things pop out on the page. All right, let's mush on. So we're back onto strokes. I'm going to click on this stroke. I'll click on linear, and I'll go to the last one. This is across. And so if I apply the across function and go get the gradient, you can see the gradient is applied across the width of the stroke. And again, I can change it so it's any different one, and I can edit this gradient as much as I like. All right, so that's a linear gradient. We looked at it first as it applied to fills, and then as it applied to strokes. Moving on, we have the radial gradient. The radial gradient, as the name implies, works, oh, see, I'm in the stroke again, I always do that. The radial gradient, as the name implies, goes from the inside out. So watch, I'll switch from a linear to a radial. See that? And also, you can edit it the same way, and if you want to use the gradient tool, you can start that hotspot wherever you like. You can go in and use these sliders from the gradient tool, or you can use, notice when I did that, the sliders over here worked too. This is just a more mobile version of the slider. All right? And then the other thing I wanted to point out to you, and I decided to do it here, if I go into my swatch menu, bring it back up. I showed you the color libraries. They're down here in the lower left-hand corner. You see the little books. In addition to all of the color swatches that you are given, you also have some gradient swatches. So for example, I'll do stone and brick. Where are you, stone and brick? There you are. So here's stone and brick. And so if I look at them by the large list view, so I can actually see what I'm looking at, there's bluestone, and I can go in to my gradients. Sorry, I'm getting a little tangled up here. Where did my gradients go? There you are. Now, this is a linear gradient. I can make it into a radial gradient. I can flip it around. But my point is, there are quite a number of these libraries. There's even a metallic library. So if you're looking to create something out of metal, you could go in and use any one of these. And I think you can see some of these are designed to be radial gradients and some of them are designed to be linear gradients. But that's not, like, the gradient police aren't going to come and get you if you decide to take your linear gradient and make it into a radial gradient. All right? Moving right along. Let's talk about these. Now, the freeform gradients can get a little fiddly. Everybody stick with me. Strongly recommend, if you're going to do a freeform gradient, or really any gradient, make yourself a little palette. It'll be so much easier, because you can, if you want to, keep moving back and forth from the swatch menu. or use the color picker, or use the color picker inside the gradient tool. But just trust me, make a palette, and that way you can choose your darks and lights as you go. So if I click on this and I come over here to the freeform gradient, there are two different kinds of freeform gradients that I can create. I can use points and lines. They are essentially the same thing. So if I grab this and this point here, this is my gradiating point. So the color is going to gradiate out from this point. And you can see right now the color is black. But if I grab my eyedropper tool, I can come here and sample. So I want my highlight color here. I'll put my shadow color here. I'll also put my shadow color here. And I'm going to go back to points. Sorry. This is what I meant by it being a little fiddly. If I click on this, now you see I lost my points. My points went away. Just come in with the direct selection tool and then come over here to the gradient window and say exit, enter the gradient. Now I can add more points. I can add points. I can subtract points if I don't want them. I just hit the delete key. Here, I'll add this point and say, nope, I don't want it. I'll hit the delete key. I can edit the gradient points to be very tight or very loose, depending on what I want. And then once I get them where I want them, I'll go in and put my midtones. Click, sample, click, sample. And so I think you can see, now that took what? 10 seconds? And I have this not unpleasant sort of little gradiated heart. Let's keep going. Let's do another kind of freeform gradient. Let's do lines. Lines simply means, watch this, click, click. I'm setting these gradient points and they are linked together. Let me grab this one and delete it. I'll grab this one and delete it. And so I'll keep setting lines. So this will be the highlight line. I just hit the escape tool to break the chain. This will be the midpoint line. Hit escape. And then this will be the shadow line. And so if I grab this line and I grab here, sorry, this is the highlight line, so I'll set the highlights. The midpoint line, oops. This is what I mean when I said it can be a very fiddly thing. Grab my tool, set my midpoints, and you can see they're kind of meeting each other as they do it. Oops. Grab my tool, put in my shadow. This is handy when you have a really large area that you want to cover. And I have students who swear by the point method. I have students who swear by the line method. It's very personal, is the best that I can offer you. And then again, if I want to edit that gradient, I can come back and click on here. I'm using the direct selection tool. And then I come back here and I say edit the gradient, and there they are. They pop back up again, and I can add more lines. I can pull the lines around. It takes a minute of practice to get this tool to work the way you want it to. See that I just added an extra line when really all I wanted to do was edit this particular circle. I'll hit the escape key, and I'll put in another kind of bright midpoint. And I'll add this lighter orange. There we go. This takes practice. I think you can see how out of practice I am. This is basically the only time I use this thing. See that? And I'm starting to get this nice kind of soft, undulating motion with the gradient tool. All right? Now, there's one more kind of gradient tool. That's the mesh gradient tool. That'll be a different video. But this is just a quick recap of the sheet. If you have any questions, you want me to do this with you, go ahead and Slack me.